Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone. We are broadcasting live across two platforms today because this is an extra special day. It's our OXY SPLASH-tacular Part 2. So, Brett is here with you today and is going to talk about non-chlorine shock and Oxy Splash and all of the things that go with it. So, take it away, Brett.
Here we go. This is a little cross promotion here. We've got Rick's Remedies. I will be Rick today, and Rick stands for really interesting chemical knowledge. So it's not specifically just Rick, although we do have a Rick that does this, which works out kind of well. And then this is also going out to our Real Scoop Live brethren. In general, we're going to talk about non-chlorine shock, what it does, some of the characteristics of it, how it functions, certain instances where you'd want to use it, and others where you would use it over chlorine or you'd use chlorine over it. So a really watered down version, and that's a little pool joke, really watered down version of what non-chlorine oxidizer does is you can take from that, there's no chlorine in it because of the name, but it's an oxidizer. So it actually breaks down contaminants in the water. So if you want to compartmentalize it, segment it a little bit more, your chlorine is your sanitizer. The sanitizer is essentially like a killer. It's going to kill bacteria, virus, other pathogens in the water that can cause illnesses. Oxidizers actually break down the components of those killers. So the sanitizer is going to kill things, the oxidizer is going to destroy them and get them so that they can either be dropped out of the water, off-gassed, or filtered out. Chlorine is a sanitizer and an oxidizer, which is good and bad in certain instances. It's good because it's a versatile product and it can actually serve multiple roles. It's bad because we ask way too much of chlorine. So in a lot of instances, if you're not trying to actively kill an algae outbreak or anything like that, you can accomplish most of the same goals using non-chlorine shock and not adversely shoot your chlorine way up through the roof, not mess with the pH of the water, and in certain instances use a heck of a lot less product to accomplish the same goal. I was talking to Stacy a couple of minutes before we started. There was a tech call I took last week where the pool had 12.3 parts per million of combined chlorine. Combined chlorine is the spent chlorine or the used up chlorine that isn't doing any work for you in the water anymore. And generally you want to get it out of there so that the free chlorine that's in there can actually do its job and not be distracted. So to get rid of combined chlorine using traditional chlorine, you need to take the amount of combined chlorine that you have and multiply that by 10. So we had 12.3, so that gives us 123. 123 is how many parts per million of free chlorine we have to add to burn the combined chlorine out of the water. What that equated to in this particular pool was 31 gallons of liquid chlorine or 46 pounds of cal hypo shock. Now, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but when you use different types of chlorine, you're not just affecting the chlorine, you're also affecting other aspects as well. So cal hypo and liquid chlorine both have a high pH. Your chlorine doesn't work as well if your pH is really high. So if you are adding this much to a pool, it's probably going to make your pH go higher, and you're probably going to have to add acid or pH down to bring it back into the range where your chlorine is actually working for you. So not only are you adding a boatload of chlorinated products, you're also having to add pH products to bring it back down in the range where it's going to work for you. Now, in this instance, they ended up using 4 pounds of non-chlorine shock. They used OXY Splash, which is one of our products, to accomplish the same goal of burning out the combined chlorine, and they didn't have to use any extra chlorine to get rid of the combined chlorine in the water. So it takes that workload off of the chlorine, so your chlorine can actually hang out in the water and be more effective at what it's meant to do, which is sanitize the water and keep it safe to swim in. The oxidizer is the workhorse. He's just cleaning up the mess afterwards. So a couple things about non-chlorine shocks. Generally, most traditional non-chlorine shocks have a slightly lower pH. OXY Splash, which is ours, has a pH that's a little bit more neutral. It's 6.7, so it's a little on the low side, but it won't mess with your pH quite as much as, say, some of the other types that are out there. Wait time to swim is usually only about 15 minutes. So if you see products that say swim in 15 minutes or 15 and swim and things like that, probably a non-chlorine shock. because you can get back in the water relatively quickly after dosing it, and not have to worry about letting chlorine levels come down for hours or even days if you really had to obliterate the pool with chlorine. Dosage rates, obviously, in extreme examples like the one I mentioned, non-chlorine shock is going to be a heck of a lot more effective in terms of the amount of product you're going to have to use versus the amount of product you'd have to use of other products. It doesn't add to your chlorine level, which is a plus and a minus, because if you're trying to actively kill an algae outbreak or potential pathogen or anything like that, you're going to want to use chlorine to make sure you're sanitizing and killing those little critters in the water that you don't want. There is no effect from stabilizer or cyanuric acid on how non-chlorine shock performs. So again, chemistry is fun because it builds on itself, but that also makes it kind of like a rabbit hole anytime you talk about all of it. Stabilizer, if it's too high, we'll just keep it simple. If your stabilizer is too high, you're not getting the most work out of your chlorine as possible. So you're going to have to use more chlorine to do what you need done in the water. Also, sunlight. Non-chlorine shock is not affected by sunlight. Chlorine shock is affected by sunlight. So if you hit a pool with chlorine, a lot of it burns off in the direct sunlight in a short amount of time. Non-chlorine shock doesn't have that issue. Bleaching. Non-chlorine shock doesn't bleach liners or pool surfaces. If you leave chlorine in direct contact with liner or pool surfaces, sometimes you can actually get discoloration, which can cause a big problem. Because it's ugly, nobody likes to look at it, and it's really hard to fix the problem. Non-chlorine shock doesn't add any calcium or salt to the water. Depending on what type of chlorine shock you're using, you could be adding boatloads of calcium. You could also be adding boatloads of salt to the water. So you're not adding as much junk that you're going to have to deal with later. And availability. Chlorine's been kind of a tough one to get this last couple of years. So people need to use the chlorine that they can get to sanitize their water and not use it so much for troubleshooting, because we need to make sure the water's safe to swim in versus things that you could take off of chlorine's plate and get better use out of it. So that's some of the big differences between chlorine shock and non-chlorine shock. OXY Splash is one that we came out with this year, which is actually a little bit stronger than most typical non-chlorine shocks. It's more pH neutral, readily available, and we've got it all season long. So if you've got additional questions, comments, or concerns, please reach out to us. And Stacy, you're going to tell them where they can reach out to us at, because you're better at remembering all of them. But I will throw out there, if you're feeling crafty, we're also on Pinterest. But yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. If you don't need chlorine, you can lean on non-chlorine shock to accomplish a lot of the same tasks. Just remember, rule of thumb, if you're trying to kill something that's actively living in the water, generally go for chlorine. If you're trying to take care of all of the secondary tasks that we put on chlorine, non-chlorine shock will get you there 9 times out of 10. It's not as prevalent out there because people don't know as much about it. So yeah, feel free to yell at us, give us your questions, and we'd be happy to take them.
Absolutely. Something that we want to always remind you too is that all of our products, OXY Splash, Easy Pool Revive, Pepper, Easy Spa, all of those products are made, shipped here in the United States. And that matters now more than ever, because across the board, we're experiencing delays with everything. So with our product, you don't have to worry about the product getting stuck in a canal on the way over or anything like that. It's right here. So that reduces our lead time significantly. So like Brett said, if you have questions, you can hit us up. We are on every social media known to man. We have our playlist on YouTube where you can watch these videos on repeat. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, like you said, if you're feeling crafty. We're also on LinkedIn.
You're going to watch these on repeat?
You can watch these on repeat. You
oh
can
my God.
Yeah, you can loop them.
That sounds terrible. Just have them playing constantly all day long. There's videos on different topics. You don't just have to watch the same one over and over again.
That's
so
right.
If you've got other
That's
weird
right.
stuff, feel free to poke around in there, but you don't have to watch them all day.
Right.
I mean, can do it.
And leave us a comment. Let us know if you're watching us live, if you caught us on the replay. That helps us know when is best time of day to go live for you. We want to make sure that if you want to catch us because you want to ask questions on the fly, that we're doing that at a time that's the most beneficial to you. So leave a comment there, live or replay, and stay on the lookout for the next live to drop. We'll be dropping more content soon. I think that's all we've got.
It's getting warmer out there. Make sure you're watching your water. Make sure you're watching your kids too, because everybody wants to get in the pool. So make sure safety's number one. Have a nice weekend, everyone.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.